The Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience 2025 Genesis Invitational Research Picks Preview. We got a course breakdown, some notes about what is happening with this tournament, and the odds are already out. At least the preliminary odds have already been released, so no need to guess them. We can just take a look at them towards the end. As always, use the time codes to jump around if you want to. I don't want to keep you too long today because we just did the research for this course 2 weeks ago when it was the Farmers Insurance Open. So if you want to go back to that show, you can find out more in-depth things. However, now that the course is being played at Torrey Pines and not at Riviera, it is of note for the Genesis. All 4 rounds are going to be at the South Course that has the POA, that is the longest course annually on the PGA Tour, and not the North Course, which typically plays as the easiest between the two courses. It's 500 yards shorter. We're not getting that this time around. So it's going to be the difficult one. Obviously, Harris English won at -8 a few weeks ago, but we did not have the field that we're getting this time. There's currently 72 players in the field for the Genesis Invitational. At the conclusion of Phoenix, the top 5 in the Aon swing are going to get themselves in as well. There's already sponsors exemptions having been given out. If Spieth ends up winning or comes solo second, I believe he gets himself into the Aon swing. Therefore, he probably would not need his sponsors exemption. But here's a quick tip. If you're thinking about who's going to get the sponsors exemptions into all these signature events, it's going to be Spieth every time. It's going to be Ricky every time. Now, Ricky did just withdraw from Phoenix this week, as did JJ Spawn. Ludwig was a WD from Pebble Beach 2 weeks ago, and we had Max Grazerman withdraw from Pebble Beach. He played in Phoenix, but did not play very well. He ended up missing the cut. All of those guys are expected to be in the field this time around. I believe that Spawn is still in based on the next 10. There's so many weird things going on. Like, for example, last year, the Genesis Invitational was an actual cut event. It was top 50 in ties, ended up playing the weekend, and there was, 22 guys that were left at home, or whatever the ties ended up being. It was the same thing for Bay Hill. It was the same thing for Jack's tournament at the Memorial, although I can't find any information on that this time around. So I'm going to go under the pretense that there is no cut, but by Monday, maybe someone will have put this on the internet. I did my research before I came on. I was like, I can't find out the answer to this. Everything, when you search the Genesis this year, it's like, it's not being played at Riviera, it's being played at Torrey Pines. So here we are. Bombers are still the route that you want to go. Although, when we take a look at what happened at the Farmers a few weeks back, it was not 3 huge bombers at the top. It was almost like the rest of the leaderboard. That's how you end up with like Christoph Ventura inside the top 10. Obviously, our guy, Potgeiger. I mean, I'm not learning his name until he wins, but he got himself into the final group because he had the most distance of anyone in the field. Then everything really went awry when he forgot to hit an iron. Well, he hit irons. He just hit them all into the bunker in the final round, and that did not turn out too well for him. So you still need to have an overall tee to green game. The approaches are going to be more difficult, obviously, the farther you have to come in. The longer hitters do have more of an advantageous outlook from that sense, that even if you are in the rough, and the rough can be pretty tricky here, that you're just going to have shorter clubs in, making it a little bit easier. But if you cannot scramble, you cannot get yourself up and down, and you actually have to make your short putts, because there's a lot of missed short putts at Torrey Pines South, then that's the route that we're going to go here. Tiger's back. Tiger's playing in this tournament. He got his TGL warm up in, and now he is going to be playing in the tournament that he is hosting. He does have an exemption to every signature event because he's Tiger Woods. It's the Tiger Woods rule. Wouldn't have it any other way. So it's great to see Tiger back. Don't have the highest hopes for him at this tournament, although he has won here, 9 times, 8 times, something crazy like that. So it's a tournament where he has a lot of good vibes, obviously great course history, but Tiger today, not necessarily the Tiger that we've seen in other years. And maybe I'll actually come up with a TGL bet, because TGL right now is funding my crippling addiction to losing on outdoor golf every single week in the betting market, unless something crazy happens at Phoenix. Jeff and I will obviously recap that on Monday before breaking down this tournament. Although Thomas Dietrich has a chance to do one of 2 things, because we talked about the biggest gutless losers on the PGA Tour who just can't win, and Jeff brought up Dietrich. It's funny because he brought up Hideki week 1, then he won, then he brought up Dietrich this week. I thought his odds were too long. Like, he wasn't in the Bo Hostler division because Hostler kept getting credit in the betting market for being a guy who like might actually win, where Dietrich was dropped below those guys. But entering Sunday with a 5-stroke lead, he either vaults to number 1 on the gutless list or he removes himself from that conversation. It's going to be very exciting, and Spieth being in the mix should be good. You know, the ratings talk that we all like to have. A 5-shot cushion going into the final round might not make for super exciting golf towards the end, but if Dietrich can like gag it back early or someone goes on a heater, we could have just a storm of great live betting opportunities on our hands. But more on that on Phoenix, you know, once I actually know the conclusion. Had I have known the conclusion of Phoenix, I wouldn't have lost all my money betting on Phoenix this week. But this is how we go. We're talking about Torrey Pines. Like I mentioned, 72 players in the field, Torrey Pines South. When we think about the course this week, we can jump over to fantasynational.com. It's Torrey Pines South, par 72, 7,765 yards, POA greens, and we're just going to sort by how these holes end up going. We should be pretty familiar, having just seen this, not against football, too. So it should be fresh in the back of your minds how these holes go. The par 3s can be pretty tricky. They have an average length of 208 yards. It is the 11th hole that ends up being the most difficult of this 3, although all 4 of them play over par. But you're going to see a lot of bogeys made here and a lot of pars made on these holes. The 2 easier of the par 3s are the ones on the front 9. Number 8 with a 15.8 birdie or better rate. Harris English bogeyed 3 holes on Friday and Saturday at the Farmers on his route to winning, and they were all the par 3s. The par 4s have an average distance of 457 yards. This is the teeth of the course. You're going to have your somewhat easy one at number 2. I remember during the U.S. Open, the last time it was held here, Bryson almost actually drove it that time, but it has an almost 20% birdie rate. The bogey rate still up around 15%. It's no easy task. Over the weekend, English played this at 1. English is 1 under on the front 9, +1 on the par 4s, and -3 on the back, -2 on the par 4s. But you can see, the teeth of these. Number 12, the most difficult hole on the course. Number 4, the second most difficult. Number 15, the third most difficult. Number 7, the fourth most difficult. And all of these measure over 450 yards. So you're going to need your driving distance. We're going to find the key range from that area as well. Now, there is a full complement of the par 5s, which is great. They are the 4 easiest holes on the course. All 3 of the 4 of them holding a sub 9% bogey rate. The only one that gets a little bit tricky is the 3-shot par 5. That's number 13. It's going to take a nice drive, a layup into the proper spot, then elevated up onto that green, and hopefully you don't miss it somewhere along the way, or you can make it bad on yourself. It has the lowest birdie rate of the bunch as well. Number 9 after that. Like, you can get there in 2 on 13. It's just not super likely, especially if they move the tees back a little bit. Although, I guess this time around with the field being a lot better than we saw for the Farmers, maybe you're just going to have more guys taking shots at this, and since they're better, they're actually going to get there. Number 6 is the easiest, and number 18, you know all about number 18. Don't suck it back with too much English there on your wedge shot if you're forced to lay up, or go Sam Stevens, get hit by a gust of wind and push your ball into the water at the moment you need to get on into the most. Although, in retrospect, having lost by 1, he could have laid up and tried to put it up there pretty close for birdie. I don't know if we're going to get the same sort of pin positions that we saw Saturday, which was the final round at the Farmers Insurance Open. That pin at the very bottom of the hill where you hit it into the hill, roll it back, and you can get it to 5 feet. Sunday at the U.S. Open, when Rahm ended up winning a few years back, it was on the right side. I believe it was on the right side. No, maybe that was 17. It was on the right side. Just he made those 2 awesome putts to end it. But there's more difficult pin locations than they tend to use at the Farmers, and we generally see that in the USGA setups. I'm wondering that being an event played at the same course that has been so close. Like when we saw this a few years back during the COVID season, where they had the work day at Muirfield Village, then they had the memorial at Muirfield Village the week later, that the second week it was burnt out and it played extremely difficult versus how easy it had played the week before. They really wanted to make it stand out from one another. In terms of a DraftKings streak this week, there's not much of an advantage starting 1 through 9, then 10 through 18, depending on how guys go off, because you have 17, you can make birdie on 17, and obviously 18 is one of the easier holes on the course, and so is number 2, but can you steal that birdie 13% of the time on number 1? That becomes the issue that you run into, and it's very similar to starting on number 1. You can go 8, 9, 10. That's probably the easier of the 2. You got a 15, 30, and 16% birdie rate on those. But if you try to go 9, 10, 11, then you run into number 11, which is the par 3, which is the fifth most difficult hole on the course, plays over par and only has an 8% birdie rate. You're just looking to try to make par. You're not actively firing at a pin there. Not that you do that all too often at Torrey Pines South anyway, but that's where we're at with all of this. We can go back. We're going to have to update this on Fantasy National. FantasyNational.com/Mayo, by the way, to get yourself that 20% off. But everything is just updated to the Genesis right now. So we go back and take a look at the tournament history. Obviously, we're going to find that for what happened, a year ago when Hideki won at Riviera, because Riviera is where they normally play this course. But just taking a look back at how everyone did, we can go and just search out Harris English. And let's try that. Harris English at the Farmers gets the win, obviously. Again, not a bomber in the traditional sense like you would think, but once again, all of the top tier bombers, the prodigious bombers that have the rest of the game to go along with it, we're not playing in this tournament. You can see 4 of the top 5 actually lost off the tee in terms of driving distance, and Harris English actually lost on fairways as well. He just putted the lights out against the field and hit his irons pretty well the entire time. You will find some guys, though, just near the top, you can see that distance really did trump talent in a lot of senses. You had Matty Schmidt, there's Pot Geiter, Luke List, Vince Norman, Taylor Moore, like all these guys ended up there in different ways, and they were marginal players from the back end of the field, like Ricky Castillo and Christoph Ventura, who I mentioned earlier, Goddard, Big Panda, Saladina, Keegan, Hayden Springer ended up there. Will Gordon. These were some of the leaders in driving distance for the week, and they actually ended up doing pretty well versus where you probably would have expected, versus what their odds would have been going into the tournament. And I mean, that's how I did so well on DraftKings that week. It's not that I got the top right, it's I got the bottom right. We had that top 40 parlay going with the Bombers. That ended up paying like 110-1 because that was just simple. Just target these guys from the back end. Maybe they can get themselves inside the top 40. Now, if we're thinking about the very top, you'll see, how did Harris English actually get it done? There it is, 6.1 strokes gained putting, almost 4 on approach. It was very similar to what Novak did. Novak ended up a little bit better off the tee, a little bit better around the green, but it was, the approach was around the same. He just could not gain as many strokes putting. Now, obviously, this is only 3 rounds of data because there's no data from the easier North Course. Now, typically easier, and Wednesday it did play significantly easier, but on the Thursday, the second round of the Farmers, there was a ton of wind, and it really reared its head at the North Course, so it played about as difficult as the South did, which is just not something that you normally see. So keep in mind, these are 3-round data from just the South Course. So if Harry English was able to outduel Andrew Novak at the North Course, or one of them got the beneficial draw, then all of a sudden you're looking a little bit better in that sense. But you didn't see a lot of guys putt the lights out near the very top. In fact, guys kind of went the other way. Pendrith is one who's just been playing really good golf. When we take a look at the short-term modeling here in a minute, you're going to see that he actually ended up, he's back-to-back top 10s. He was top 15 at the Century, and he has not been able to roll his putter at all this year. But the driving and the approach has been there for him. Even the tee to green at the Farmers the last time around, that's at the South Course in particular. He's going to be a very popular bet this week, and I guess we can probably just take a look at his odds if we just jump over. What is Taylor Pendrith already this week? He's probably like 45-1. He's exactly 45-1. It's going to be a popular bet. He's over the past 36 rounds, he's first in par 5s. He's second in ball striking. The around the green is bad, but it was good here, and overall his putting has been good over the past 36, but we've seen that turn the other way. Mainly due to missed short putts, honestly, and that's something that's going to rear its head here again. So if he can rectify that, it was a lot like the JT Poston play this week, where his driving and irons had been so good, and even normally his driving isn't all that great. His irons tend to be like pretty static; they're pretty good, but usually he makes up a ton of strokes putting. He could not putt to save his life coming into Phoenix, and he actually started to roll it a little bit better until the third round when he kept missing really short putts, and it went back the other way. But you have to get lucky with those sort of things. You see the model that I built out here, we'll get to that in a little bit. We'll try to find some more people along the way. In terms of guys who gained a bunch on approach, like Hideki was all over it at the South Course. He just couldn't drive putt. Like, it's a problem. He came 32nd, and he got eaten up by the North Course, I believe, on that difficult day. Chan Kim, Sam Stevens, Kevin Streelman, Andrew Novak, Putnam. There's Harris English. He finished 7th for the week in approach. And he was second in putting. That's usually a good recipe for success. Valimaki putted the lights out, as did Lee Hodges. You're just not going to see a lot of these names in the field this week. Novak, I believe, is in the field. Let's see here with Novak. Did he get himself in? As of right now, he is in. He actually rates out really well over the past 36 rounds for this field. So it's nice to see that he had played well coming in and played well here. Off the tee at the course, it was Pot Gaita, Norman, all the big hitters. And then you had Sam Stevens, who has good distance, but like average distance versus this field, but was hitting a bunch of fairways. Pendrith, Chuck Hoffman, Grazerman was up there, Spahn was up there. There's Keegan. Nick Hardy had actually played this one really well, though he's not in the field. He missed his putt. He was one of the few guys. He needed to make his putt coming back on Saturday morning in Phoenix in order to make the cut. I think it was like a 17-footer, and he just missed it. But you can see a lot of these guys who gained off the tee, the big hitters in the field. And even when we look back over time, it's a lot of big hitters, then a lot of guys who scrambled and made a bunch of putts over time. So that's just a different way to try to take a look at it. How was Jason Day? Jason Day actually played this tournament pretty well. He just could not make a putt. I had bet on Jason Day, I think. Did I bet on him here? No, I bet on him at Pebble because I didn't actually think he would really get it going, although he did rectify his putting a little bit on POA surfaces on the small greens at Pebble Beach, but the ball striking continues to be pretty good. It wasn't as good at Pebble, but if you can keep up that driving, keep up the approach play, and not lose 6 strokes putting over the course of three rounds, he should be a pretty decent play here. And when you look at his odds versus what we saw a few times ago, he's now 40-1. I think that makes sense. This is a better fit for him than Pebble was, but although these POA surfaces have always been really good to him. Will Zalatoris was someone who obviously withdrew from this tournament the last time around. He comes in at 45-1. He was a very popular bet at 25 until he pulled that WD. He was 48th at Pebble Beach, but Pebble Beach is not really a spot where you'd want to go and try to go get Will Zalatoris, at least in my mind. Maybe I'm wrong on that, and he ends up playing there pretty well over time. It is places like Torrey Pines where we really want to dig in and try to find him. He's played really well at the Farmers over the course of his career. You can see 3 top 15 finishes in his past 4 years at the course, and hopefully he's fine after whatever the hell he WD'd with. A lot of guys WD'd that week because they knew that they were going to play it again, and this time they get their guaranteed paycheck this time around. So overall, that's an easy way to look at it. The other thing that I want to look at is the U.S. Open, because I always thought this was a perfect Scottie Scheffler course. Not that everything isn't a perfect Scottie Scheffler course. The more difficult that you make everything, the better he tends to play. Although he's struggling a little bit. That's the Country Club. Maybe it's 2021 U.S. Open that we're looking for. There we are. Torrey Pines South. Try to find out some names. Obviously, it was 4 years ago, and the setup is not going to be quite as difficult as it was at Torrey Pines that year. Rahm, Louis, if you currently play on Live, then you probably did pretty well, but you see that you had Harris English. He came third, just won at Torrey Pines this year. Colin Morikawa, Berger, and Berger has got himself into the field, I believe, as long as he maintains his position in Phoenix and doesn't drop too far. He's currently second in the Aon 5. He needs to obviously hold that spot for himself to continue to get in, but I thought that was interesting. Then you had Scottie Scheffler, Xander, Rory, Henley was up there, Cantlay, Matt Hughes, I don't believe is playing. There's Spieth playing some good golf, man. Justin Thomas, Harman was like okay going into the third round at Phoenix, but not the prototypical type of player that I want to take here. Like, all things being equal, if I had to take one of the shorter hitters to fit that Harris English type mold, it would probably be Russell Henley over someone like Brian Harman, especially at the moment, with Russell Henley coming off the really nice putting week that he had at Pebble and ended up coming inside the top 10 against an elevated field at the same time. You see some more of your shorter hitters towards the back end, but you even had your Bubbas and Tommies and Gary Woodlands end up making the cut. Vegas. Anytime Vegas is making the cut at a tournament, it's probably leaning pretty bomber when we think about it. So that's just a bit of the course history to look at, what we saw at this tournament 2 weeks ago and what we saw at the U.S. Open when it was played that was the last time a really strong field played at the Farmers. That could probably give you more of a sense of the type of player that you're going to see. Even if you just wanted to use the U.S. Open filter down on the left-hand side, you can see U.S. Opens, and you can go check that out if you want, because a lot like Phoenix this week, you're going to see a lot of players who just have an overall skill set with a lot of distance off the tee do really well at U.S. Opens, will probably do well this week at Torrey Pines at the same time. When you're going on a golf trip, you don't need any more stress. You don't need any more costly airline fees. With complimentary insurance, real-time tracking, and dedicated support and on-time delivery, you need to use ShipSticks.com. Just schedule your shipment, attach your label, and ShipSticks handles the rest, delivering your gear directly to your destination. You don't want to have to worry about a connection, whether your clubs are going to make it and you're racing to the course. No, your clubs are going to be there. ShipSticks offers white glove shipping for golf clubs and luggage. Travel worldwide without luggage. ShipSticks delivers to 180 countries for a hassle-free, gear-free journey. Right now, ShipSticks is offering my listeners 20% off your first shipment when you go to shipsticks.com and use the code PatMayo. Go to shipsticks.com and use the code PatMayo to get 20% off your first shipment and save yourself the hassle this golf season. That's shipsticks.com. Make sure to use code PatMayo so they know that I sent you. Welcome to the TGL presented by SoFi, golf's newest league. It's sharp and it's electric. 2 hours of hammer dropping, overtime forcing, playoffs on the line golf with 24 of the best players from the PGA Tour. Monday, February 17th, triple header time. Atlanta versus LA, Atlanta versus the Bay, and the Bay versus Boston. Then Tuesday, it's Tiger and Jupiter against the New York Golf Club. Tune in to TGL matches only on ESPN, ESPN2, and ESPN+. Keep up. It's golf. We're starting to see, maybe the Bay isn't as good as they looked week one, but they put a pounding week one on the opposition, and the LA Golf Club has looked extremely good. They've looked like the best team so far in their 2 matches. So what you can do is just bet on those teams against the teams that have not looked as good. So you can pick on the Atlanta team twice if you want to. You can go LA minus 120 not this Monday, the following Monday, and then you can go the next day, the Bay in their doubleheader to beat up again on Atlanta, then take on Rory's team, which lost to Tiger's team, so you might as well bet on them. And it's all minus 120 for each of them. You can parlay them all together right now and get ahead of it. People are going to pound. Listen, I don't know how much people are betting on TGL, but we have seen one person make a statement. Like even last week, I was big on Los Angeles, and they opened at plus 105. They closed at minus 125. Now they're minus 125. Trust me, they're going to bet on LA again. They're going to end up like minus 175. So if you do want to get your money in good, not saying it can be a winner or not guaranteed, but you're going to get the better line right now if you just take the LA Golf Club on the Monday and then the doubleheader on Tuesday. Take the Bay twice, both at minus 120, and you should at least beat the market and put yourself into a nice position. You want to get crazy? Maybe, just maybe, you parlay them all together. Who knows? And end up with like a 6.5 to 1 on your hands where you get to root for the teams that are the best against the teams that are no good. Seems pretty sensible to me. Back over to fantasynational.com, fantasynational.com/Mayo to get that 20% off. You can see the model I've made. I went through this last time on the Torrey Pine Show. It's the Torrey Pine South model. Ball striking around the green, par 5s, driving distance 12, 12, 11, 17%. That key par 4 range of 450 to 500 yards at 11%. The long par 3s, only 3%. I just kind of wanted to see it. I bet birdies are better gained in there. Just take a look at it. It's weighted at 0%, but sometimes visually on the screen, I like to see these things next to me. Putting at 5%, long proximity from 175 to 200 at 3, 200 plus at 11, fairways at 5%, and approach at 11%. The thing that is weighted the most is driving distance inside of this model. I have made another model as well that is just simplified, and I'll get to that in a minute, but you can see Scotty, Rory, Sungjae, Pendrith, Max Grazerman. This is over the past 36 rounds. We'll shrink it down in a minute to see if anyone else pops out. I think Hideki might actually be somewhat underrated here coming into the week. Now, he hasn't quite had his best stuff, and this will be the 4th week in a row, I believe, that he has played. But as we just went back and looked at Torrey Pines the last time, his approach play was excellent. He just couldn't really get it done at the North Course. Maybe he can harness all that. We can see he's down to 22 to 1 when the odds are going to readjust by Monday, especially in a reaction to what happens in Phoenix. If Scotty storms back and wins down 10 strokes, then his plus 340 is going to go to plus 250 pretty quickly. And if he shoots a 75, maybe it goes to 4 to 1 and Rory sneaks back up. But right now we're seeing Rory at the top of the market with Scotty, but he's still more than double the odds of what Scotty is at the moment. But Hideki at 22. After that, it's Cam Davis, Justin Thomas, Novak, Ludwig. Ludwig is going to be tricky. I'd want a bit more of an odds break where I just don't know what his health is. He might still have the shits for all I know, and he just withdraws again. I don't need that happen to me. It's not like his game looked great anyway, because he got sick. He was the first round leader from the North Course at the Farmers. Then he got sick overnight and had to puke on the side of the course, then had to withdraw the next week. So hopefully he's fine now 3 weeks later, but we'll see. Cantlay, Woodland, Finau, Eckroat, Hovland, they're all up there. If we just look at the Bombers in general over the past 36, it's Ben An, Rory, Gary Woodland, Cam Young, Rasmus Højgaard. Højgaard putting in some work. Too bad he went double water on 15 Saturday at Waste Management. That wasn't great, but he did not play in this tournament a few weeks ago. Did play at Pebble, came inside the top 25. I mean, he's currently in second in Phoenix, albeit 5 strokes back. I think he's a pretty decent look. 40 is a bit much considering we just talked about someone like Jason Day or Pendrith, who I kind of like more, either the same odds or slightly behind. But it's interesting to see driving distance-wise him pop up. So that's the top 5. After that, you got Grazerman, Pendrith, Wyndham Clark, who look good for a round in Phoenix. Ludwig Spieth, number 10 at the moment. Kevin Yu Sahith, who's just continues to break my heart. He didn't know where he was hitting his irons the first round in Phoenix. He was just hitting everything like 25 yards past the pin every single time. Don't know what was going on there. Sam Burns, JT, there's Keegan, Zalatoris, Nicky Dunlap, who maybe this is better for Dunlap. I mean, he can drive it a ton. He doesn't know where it's going when he hits it. Rogers, Stevens, Davis Thompson, Seamus Power, Steven Yeager, Patrick Cantlay, Cam Davis, Tom Kim. There's Scotty. If you want a better sense of the actual true driving leaders, I would recommend going to just driving overall and increasing your sample size because, I mean, this is all weighted to the field, driving distance relative to the field. So you might get some wonky tournaments in there where you're driving it big, but you play against all of the big hitters. Or conversely, someone like Stan Stevens might play against some of the smaller hitters because he tends not to play in some of the bigger events. Like contextualizing these stats a little bit makes more sense to me. So you put in fairways and greens, that's where driving distance is going to be. And then just go to past 100 rounds. That should weed out any of like the weird sampling that goes in there, and then you get a better sense of everyone. It's a lot of the similar names, obviously, but you won't see, some of the, like Tom Kim isn't going to be necessarily up there like he was when we looked at the past 36 rounds. So in that time frame, driving distance wise, it's Rory, Ben An, Gary Woodland, Wyndham Clark, Pendrith, top 5. Ludwig, Kevin Yu, Cam Young, Max Grazerman, Justin Thomas. That's the next tier down. Adam Scott. Scott could be a look here at 75. Keep that in mind. He's won the Genesis, not at this course, obviously, before, but he should be able to play this tournament pretty well. Steven Yeager, Sam Stevens, Rasmus Højgaard, Sam Burns, Spieth, Rogers, Keegan, Finau, Victor, Will Zalatoris, Nick Dunlap, Scotty Scheffler at number 23, Sahith, Davis Thompson. There's Dietrich. Again, we'll see how Dietrich keeps it up. Cantlay, Mav McNeely, Max Homa, and then Tiger Woods. That might be going back to like 2013 or something like that. Then you got like Cam Davis, Jason Day. There's Harris English. Like Harris English isn't short off the tee. He's just not prodigiously long like a Rory McIlroy. We're thinking about it in that way. If we think about the bottom of the field, the guys that might have the hardest time with this, Bez, Henley, that's a tough look for Henley, although we've seen him do well at the U.S. Open here before because he can scramble, he can putt. You can just see his driving distance, 67th in this field over the past 100 rounds. When you take a look at fairways, good drives, greens and regulation, sand saves, and scrambling, he is in the top 21 of all of those other metrics, including top 3 in fairways, top 10 in good drives, top 10 in sand saves. So that's where he's going to make his bones. Aaron Rye is very similar in that sense. I can't remember if he played Farmers a few weeks ago. I remember when he made a run at the Farmers. Now, he missed the cut at the Farmers last time around. Because it gets more, if you don't have the rest of your game clicking, it's going to be tough in that sense. Miscut, 33rd, 52nd, and 6th at the Torrey Pines Farmers Insurance Open over the years. But you can see, he's number 1 in fairways. If you are not going to have distance, you have to be up there. Like Morikawa was the other one. He's 2nd in fairways gained. Siwoo, made the cut at that U.S. Open. Those guys can get along with hitting their longer irons a little bit better and figuring everything else out along the way. The Postons of the world, the Lowers, Harmons, even Nick Taylor for that matter, they're going to be a hard look this week because not only do they lack the distance, they are not elite at all of those other things, especially with their irons and fairways, that they become just a harder click. Like Glover, maybe, because he's actually good at all those things. And if you do think that putting gets mitigated a little bit because of the POA, maybe Glover is a name that you could potentially go to, but it's just hard to trust many of these guys who do not pound the ball out there. The degree of difficulty for them is going to be so much more difficult. Like Lowry could potentially get away with it. We just saw Sung Jae get away with it. They're in the minority of that, but they do. I mean, we know that they can be excellent iron players. Lowry plays hard courses really well. He plays windy courses really well. Ditto for Sung Jae and all of their short games. Like, these are legit good players. I'll throw Akshay into that mix as well. Like, he hits a ton of fairways. He hits a ton of greens in regulation. When he gets hot with his irons, he gets super hot. The scrambling for Lowry has been down, but the harder the course, the better it's going to be for him. So that's how the modeling looks in terms of driving distance. I want to go back to overall strokes gained, and we'll shrink this down to, let's say, past 24 rounds. And we're going to throw on just normal strokes gain. And what I want to see is past 24 rounds on courses that are hard. I think sometimes at the resort courses, we look at guys who beat up on easy courses. It would be a disservice to everyone to not look. I mean, that's difficult hitting fairways. Sorry, that's not one. Difficult relative to par is what we're looking at this time around. So we'll put on those filters. You can make sure that you have the filters that you want. So we see last 24 rounds, scoring relative to par. Difficult. Okay. And let's look at a per round average here. And we can even take a look, like we can see the past 24 rounds of the hard courses that Lauer played. So a round at the Farmers, a round at Bermuda, the U.S. Open, 2 rounds at the Canadian Open that played difficult relative to par. Now, obviously, all these courses are not exactly the same. What you saw in Hamilton when it played difficult is not the same test that you're going to get at Torrey Pines when it played difficult. But overall, just when scoring is tough, who does a little bit better? No shocker, Scheffler is a stroke better per round than anyone in the field on difficult courses. I saw a stat about official golfer rankings points where Tiger actually had, I believe it was 33% of his lifetime world rankings points come from Augusta, Torrey Pines, Bay Hill, and Memorial. Scotty was very much the same way. Now, obviously, he doesn't play Torrey Pines all that much, but for him, it was Augusta, Sawgrass, Memorial, and Bay Hill. And Memorial and Bay Hill, they play hard, just like Torrey Pines is likely to play hard this time around. I think at plus 340, if you can find a boost or something to get Scotty up, I think it might be the time. If you're going to unload the clip on someone at the top, I'm considering doing that already with Scotty Scheffler this week. I got to get a win somewhere on the board if I'm going to bet $500 between 8 separate guys to try to max out to get work to wherever. If I just put the $500 on Scotty, I feel like I might have a runner by Sunday where I just look at the other 8 guys who sucked and it didn't work. But when the courses get hard, Scheffler, Morikawa, Henley, Rory, Ludwig, they're your top 5. After that, it's Bez, Novak, Billy Horschel, Akshay, Tommy Fleetwood, Seb Straka, Mac Hughes, who apparently is in the field at 190-1. Patrick Cantlay, there's Adam Scott. I think Adam Scott at 75 might actually be a play for me this time around. Hideki's at 22. He's up there as well, but you can still bet Hideki 50-1 at CoolBet right now to win the PGA Championship at Quail Hollow, where he was top 5, I believe, last time. I think he was 3rd the last time they had the PGA Championship there. I mean, I don't know why it wouldn't go there. You see Adam Scott, his POA putting splits are better than anywhere else. He plays well in difficult conditions. He plays well when it's windy AF or when it's calm. He has a very balanced game, and that's what we've seen the past few times out. Like at Pebble Beach, he was very balanced off the tee. And we haven't seen him win in a while, although he's had a lot of these good driving weeks. The putter comes along, but the approach play so far this season, I mean, 1.5 is nothing to write home about, but it's better than -4 or something like that. And we've seen him do it against these difficult fields. So Adam Scott could be one of the longer shots to put on your card right now. He might even fall down a little bit more to like 90-1, something like that, once the odds get readjusted on Monday, because he's not playing this weekend. So if a few guys end up moving up the board, maybe another few guys start moving down the board. What's Spieth at right now? 35-1. That's probably a bit steep for Jordan Spieth, who has never won at Torrey Pines or really put in that great of an effort at Torrey Pines in the past. Although we said that about Xander. Is Xander playing? No, Xander is not currently listed in the field. I thought that he was going to be. I guess he's still injured right now. So at least that does take one of the bigger names out of the field from that sense. But that's who plays really well at courses relative to par difficult over the past 24 rounds. Guys that suck: Nico, Tiger, Justin Thomas, Nick Taylor, Rasmus Højgaard, Eric Cole, Cam Davis. Cam Davis also just just anecdotally, plays really well at short courses. Although when you saw him make that degree of difficult shot at Pebble Beach, you'd be like, this guy probably just plays well in just, all of the time. Plays really well in windy conditions, though. But when just take a look at where he does well. American Express, bit of a shorter course. Pete Dye course, top 20. Obviously, Pebble, the shortest course, comes inside the top 5. Don't even remember where BMW was played. That was at that weird one in Denver. Rocket Mortgage, he's won that twice. That is a bit of a longer course, although it plays to the strengths of guys who can spray it around off the tee. But overall, the Fortinet, Shriners, St. Jude, that's that south wind. He just kind of pops up or doesn't pop up. He's very Siwoo in that way. But you see Heritage and Players, Pete Dye type courses. CJ Cup, don't even remember where it was played that year. Colonial top 10, Heritage top 10. So where he plays well, he tends to play well and go through with it. That's something that we've seen over and over. Let's see, at the Farmers, he's never had a particularly good run. Can't figure out these greens for the life of him, and has not finished inside the top 30 in any of his 6 visits to the Farmers Insurance Open. So probably a fade for me coming this weekend. As you can see, at difficult courses, does not play well. Sahith, Tom Kim, Dunlap, Rose, Kevin Yu. The worse the player you are, it seems, in this field, the worse you are on difficult courses. That shouldn't be a big shocker. But, the guys from the bottom of the field. I wouldn't expect a big upset winner unless someone really rolls a hot putter, like someone like Gary Woodland, who you can poke it out there. He just makes all of his putts for that week, although we have not seen any form to suggest that he's not that he's going to compete with the very top end type players. So keep that in mind as well. Let's reset our filters. We can clear them all. Right now, we're back to past 24 rounds. Let's go to past 36. And in the modeling, I went through this one the last time around. It's the Torrey Pines Simple. And just take all of the things that I think matter the most into play. Driving distance. Actually, I'll pull up the entire thing if you want to see it on the screen. Driving distance, 33%. Fairway, 6%. Proximity, 200 plus, 20. Proximity, 175 to 200, 16. Around the green, 25%. So there's no strokes gained approach or strokes gained putting in this. We just have to hope the putting works out well for itself. But the best players in this particular one, which probably, since we do not have Scotty Scheffler near the top, probably means it's worthless. So keep that in mind. He's number 11 over the past 36 rounds in this modeling. It's Ben An, Rory, Thomas, Hideki, Cam Davis, Sungjae, Ludwig, Grazerman, Finau, Cam Young. Good Lord. When Cam Young is over Scotty, it's probably time to go back to the drawing board. I'm looking more for guys from the back end of the field with this. You see Davis Thompson rates out pretty well. So does Tom Kim, Ben Griffin, Sam Stevens, Burns. There's Pendrith at number 22. Jaeger's still pretty good. I don't know what to do with Jaeger. I bet him last time out. I thought he was pretty good odds at Farmers. He had played well there before, and he sucked at the Farmers. And he was only 40th at Pebble Beach. Maybe this is a nice opportunity to go back to him now that some of the steam is off. He's 130 to 1 this time around. And he has, one win on the PGA Tour. Maybe you're looking at for a top 10, something like that. Let's try to find the courses where he did well. A long, difficult course in Houston where he beat Scheffler towards the end. The scrambling and putting were on point for him. Black Desert's a longer course. That's during the swing season. Ended up coming second there. Sony's a short course. He came third. Mexico's a long course. He came third. Farmers, he came third. That's a long course. I don't know much about these Corn Ferry events where he's been up there. Wells Fargo, I believe that was at that was at the Avenel Farms, because that was the year the President's Cup was at Quail Hollow, and they pulled it off the list that year. He did come 6th that time around. Rocket Mortgage in Houston, 2 other longer courses. The Bunny Ranch, that's a longer course. So the longer courses are where he does excel, but we know that he can blow up at the same time. So we do have to keep that in mind a little bit more. Let's go past 100 rounds on this model to try to normalize everything to see if it makes Scheffler any better. Yeah, Scotty goes up to number 2. Rory's at number 1. That's the one player I'm willing to accept to be ahead of Scotty Scheffler over the past 100 rounds, specifically weighted on what so much emphasis on driving distance, knowing that Scotty is not the biggest bomber in the world, and that's the only spot where he's trailing right now to Rory. With it being weighted 33%, maybe that's too much. Well, maybe if we go, let's add in putting to this. And we'll throw in putting, and we'll make that 10%. And then we'll drop driving distance down to 24%. And it probably flips it. It doesn't even flip it. That's because, obviously Scotty, not the best putter going, and Rory can be at the same time. But you have Rory, Scotty, Hideki, Clark, Ludwig, Cantlay. Novak still holds up, even over the longer sample. Pendrith moves up to number 8th. Finau, Ben An. I can't even really remember how Finau's been playing. feel like it's been okay. He was 13th at Pebble, missed the cut at Farmers, missed the cut at the American Express, and it was a lot of him beating up on Spyglass, then chipping and putting at Pebble Beach. The driving has been really bad for Tony, but this always used to be a spot where you look at Tony over the years. And if you're looking right now for overall course history at Pebble Beach, at least statistically, if that's how we're going to look at it, just go to, we probably don't need past 100 rounds, and you can take a look at, let's say, the past 12 rounds overall that all players have played, and we'll use 2025, 2024, 2023, 2022, and we'll use the past 4 years of data. Now, some guys are not going to have any data because they have not played in the Farmers, so we'll go to Torrey, and let's see here. Torrey Pines South is the one that we want to go to. I know I have searched that before, so that was in my way. And this is a very interesting way to go take a look at course history. We'll take a look at per average, past 12 rounds over the past 4 years at this course. Who has been the best? It has been Sungjae. Akshay, that's only in 3 rounds. Pavon, obviously he won, so that's helpful for him. Sam Stevens, Zalatoris, Max Homa, Colin Morikawa, Hideki, Cam Young, and Scotty Scheffler. Cam Young's going to be interesting. He's 100-1 again. I don't want to be a part of the Scam Young hive here, although he did play pretty well in Phoenix. Maybe he's starting to turn it around a little bit. I don't have the numbers on me off the top of my head about his approach numbers, but he seems to have solved something in Phoenix versus what we saw earlier on in the year. And we know that he was someone that we pegged for a PGA Championship or a U.S. Open because we liked how that skill set really did develop. And obviously he's played well at Torrey Pines. Scheffler in only 3 rounds has done really well here too. Keegan, Day, Finau, Theegala, Pendrith, Horschel, Ricky. Pendrith has a full complement of the 12 rounds. We take a look at putting and just try to find some guys who have spiked over the longer term. Sungjae putts really well on these greens, as does Lee Hodges, as does Andrew Novak. Per round, Pavon's the best, but again, it's 4 rounds. Obviously, he won here. His numbers are going to look really good. Horschel has putted well here. Eckroat over 6 rounds has putted well here. Who else? McNeely and Theegala. Dietrich and Rose, that's 10 rounds for Rose. Day has putted well, although did not putt well this year. Historically, had putted very well at this course. So that's interesting to see that the long form, he does putt well here. He's had a bad year this time around going into it. Let's look at it around the green. Obviously, you're going to have some chip-ins that skew these stats because Corey Connors should not be number 1 around the green anywhere. That's 1 round worth of data. So you have to contextualize that as well. Over the long term, guys who consistently gain around the greens here, Sungjae and Stevens in 10 and 9 rounds, Hideki and Rogers, Lauer, Pendrith, Novak, and Jason Day all do really well around the greens, as does McNeely and Keegan Bradley. If we take the opposite round of that, guys with a lot of rounds, Woodland can't chip at all at this place, loses a stroke per round over his 7. Kevin, you can't chip here. Ludwig has struggled chipping at the South Course, as has Theegala, Eckroat, and those are the big ones that pop out. Putting-wise, if you flip it the other way, Connors in his 1 round lost 4.5 strokes putting. Good for him. Who has a big sample? Finau's putting in his 8 rounds over the past 4 years. He's losing a stroke per round at the South Course. Cantlay only has 3 rounds, did not fare very well. Patrick Rogers sucks at putting here, almost a stroke loss per round over his past 10 rounds at the South Course. Kevin Yu, Steven Jaeger. Jaeger's putter has not been very good at the South, and that materialized when he had that 3-stroke lead 2 years ago, heading into the back 9 at Torrey Pines, and just started missing everything from everywhere. It's not as bad as it seems, 0.43 strokes per round, but that's going to be like a minus 1.75 for the tournament. Probably not something that you're going to win with on the PGA Tour, especially at a signature event. You're going to have to make some putts this week at Torrey Pines. If we guess the odds, we don't need to because we already have the odds up. They're currently from DraftKings Sportsbook as we go through it. Plus 340 for Scotty, Rory 7-1, Colin at 14, Ludwig, Hideki, Justin Thomas at 22. And again, this is before the conclusion of the Waste Management, so guys' odds might flick a little bit if they are playing in that tournament. Like Tom Kim and Spieth are close to the lead. Scheffler's obviously, he's not close to the lead in Phoenix, but he's there. He's Scotty Scheffler. He can go off and do this. But Cantlay, Tom Kim, Jordan Spieth, Fleetwood's at 35. I think I'd be more interested in Rasmus, if he can continue the form. You got Jason Day at 40. I'd be interested in that. Zalatoris at 45. I think you'll find better numbers on all these guys, but I can see that Day, Pendrith, and Zalatoris are going to be very likely to be popular wagers this week, as is Sam Burns, especially if he has a really good Sunday at the Waste Management, ends up like a top 5 or something like that. He's probably not going to win being so far back, but a good weekend. We'll have good vibes coming through. Deitree's in the driver's seat right now. Harris English obviously just won here. He's at 55-1. Adam Scott at 75. I think those are pretty decent odds. Wyndham Clark, if he could flash anything, I'd like him. But, outside of one round, he was pretty crappy in Phoenix. He was the first round leader, and then it all went away. Jaeger at 130. Novak at 130. It's hard. It's going to be hard to bet those guys outright in a tournament like that. You might just have to go with your gut and call it a week and have the 2 or 3 guys that you have conviction in, whether it be a Scotty or a Rory, and that's the route that you want to go. Or maybe this is the week you go with Colin, because it feels like everyone's like, fuck Colin at this point, and no one wants to bet him, and those are the weeks where he ends up near the very top of the leaderboard, and he has that sustained success at Torrey Pines over the course of his career, albeit without a win. All right, you smash the like, you sub to the channel. I'll be back Monday with the Torrey Pines and Genesis Invitational full betting breakdown, one and done with Feinberg. We got the Super Bowl recap. We got the DraftKings plays. I have a hockey show coming out for the Four Nations Face-Off as well, and some bets that you can get in on that. There's a lot going on. If you're watching this before the Super Bowl, code Mayo at Underdog will get you a bunch of free picks and a bunch of free money, and I put a newsletter post up with some of my favorite props for the big game this week. If it's afterwards, hopefully you played them and they won. If you played them when they lost, don't hold me responsible, because you knew tailing me was probably not a good idea anyway, all right? I'm Pat Mayo. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!